Welcome back to the Blazor Server In-Depth course. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at deleting data. Now, this is actually a much simpler task than updating is, but it's got a similar feel to it in the fact that we need to have that ID. So let's go over to Visual Studio and we'll pick up where we left off. And let's go to the Read People page. And in here we have this last section has an update button. I think we can put another button right afterwards. So let's add a margin here. So margin in the X direction of 2. And then we're going to create another button that's very similar. In fact, let's copy and paste this. But I only want to show it if we're not in delete mode for this person. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to create a private int ID to delete equal to 0. And then we're going to have an if statement here at if. And then it's ID to delete equals p.id. So if you have a matching ID to the one you want to delete, then we're going to show a different button here. But for now, so for anything else, we're going to have a button like this, and it's going to say delete. But the onClick event will be a little bit different. And we're going to change also the btn primary to danger. And the onClick is going to say that the ID to delete equals p.id. All right. So if you click the delete button, it's going to change the ID to delete to be this ID, which will then hide this, and it's going to show something here. Now, what's it going to show here? Well, another button. And this one is confirm delete. So we're going to have a button. When I click it, we're going to have another button pop up that says, you need to confirm this. All right. And we're going to make this danger as well. And maybe make this the outline danger. So that way it's outlined in red for this one, but this one turns all red. Like, this is a big deal. Okay, confirm delete. What it's going to do is it's going to delete person. And we're going to pass in the ID. Okay, so you come down here to our private void, delete person, int ID. And actually, we want this to be an async task. That way we can call our method. So we're going to we're going to use this person data service right up here. So let's go to, you see why I say I want to separate out the code from the HTML? Because these pages get long after a while, and you're scrolling up and down. All right. So person data dot delete, we don't have that yet. So let's add that. So I'll shrink down this. I'll go to support library, and let's actually go to sample DB and add a store procedure first, because we know we need that. Store procedure. We're going to call this sp people underscore delete. And we're going to pass in ID. That's an int. And we will begin, set no count on, and we'll end. And in here, what we'll do is we'll say delete from dbo.people where ID equals ID. This is another really big where clause, really important. If you don't have this, and again, if you've worked with data for any length of time, you've probably done this. If you run just this is going to delete every person from your table. That's not a good thing. So double check that you have your where clause. Also note that by doing this in our SQL Server data tools, this is not the query designer, so I can't accidentally run this query. Because one of the things you can do in SQL Server Management Studio or SSMS is when you're just highlighting like this kind of casually and you run this or hit F5 in SSMS, it's going to run just what's highlighted. And that would run the delete from people, even though you had a where clause, because of the fact that you're only highlighting part of the query. So just be very careful not to delete all the people at your table. All right, so there's our store procedure. Now let's go and actually let's run that. So publish. There we go. And then we'll collapse this down and we'll collapse this down and we'll go to the person SQL data service. And in here, I'm gonna make a copy essentially of this. And we're gonna say delete person. And actually, we're not even gonna pass in iPerson model. We're just gonna pass in int. And we're gonna call it ID. Okay. And so what we'll do is we'll say new ID equals ID. And this is the person delete. Okay, so delete person, you pass in an ID. It's going to call the save data, which just means it doesn't return any records. And that's going to call the delete store procedure, which passes in the ID to delete. And there we go, we're done. Now we will elevate this to the iPerson data service, the interface. And now we have access to it. So person data dot delete person, pass in the ID. And now in order to keep this page refreshed, we need to say people dot remove. We're going to remove a specific person. And what person do you want to remove? Well, let's say people dot where x.id equals ID. First default. Okay, so we're going to say, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, find for me the first match of ID equals this ID being passed in. When you find that match, just get the first one of those, and then we're going to remove that from the people list. Okay, and we need to await this. So now that should remove this person. So we've got our delete button, which just, this one right here actually. So this button first, all it does is toggle showing this section right here. So it shows it, and we're going to say, hey, confirm, do you want to delete this? If yes, call that delete method with the ID, and then it will delete the user down here in this method. We should then set the ID to delete back to 0. That way it hides all those confirmed deletes, or that confirmed delete. Let's run this. All right, here we go. Read people. Now we have a delete button. I'm going to click delete under Timothy. Let's maximize this so it's not quite so crunched. Confirm delete. I'm going to say yes. Now Timothy's gone. If we go back off and come back, Timothy's still gone. If we delete and confirm delete on Sue, now Sue is gone, and yes, they're still gone. So now I have to add back in Tim Corey, and year 1 is fine. And it goes, nope, that's not fine at all. So if you go over to Kestrel and look, we've got a fail here. And I'm not sure why it's graying out on me. But Kestrel has a fail here, and it says unhandled exception. The SQL date time overflow must be between 1/1 and it's 1753. Okay, so that date is wrong. All right, so we need to make sure we actually have a valid date when we send it. We can't send it a date of year 1 because that's a problem. So we live and we learn. Tim, Corey, and Tim's got a, let's do 2000 because I'm sure I'm 20 years old, at least. Sue, Storm, and Bob Smith. We need to change that year, though. We can default this to a different year or a different date. There we go. So now we have 3 people. Tim, from the database. Not a lot of SQL code, not a lot of work we have to do on the forms or we only have to create a new form. It's just the same form we're going to reuse again. So with that, practice it, try it out, make sure you understand what's going on, and then once you're comfortable, come on back for the next lesson.